So I am not the biggest fan of LEGO Harry Potter. I think it's a shame that it's basically filling in for LEGO Castle, but occasionally you get sets like the Durmstrang ship, and I couldn't resist. It looks so much like a medieval ship. It's intimidating, it's shaped beautifully, and it just offers so much lore for my LEGO Castle realm, especially for my Black Falcons. However, that might be a video for another time, because here I want to talk about the 4 shields on either side of the ship, and I'm always on the lookout for new factions, so this was perfect for me. So I bought a second sticker sheet and created some factions and some lore to go with them, based on what the designs made me think of. A number of voices in the LEGO Castle Discord remarked that they didn't like that they were stickers, but I prefer this because it gives me the chance to apply them to brown shields, which just looks better because they're made of wood, in theory. So the first faction gives us a dark red theme to work with. We have 3 stars and 3 dolphins and a line through the middle on the shield. Now I was really glad of this because there haven't been any castle factions with an overt naval theme, yet there's a great hunger for it in the community. I don't know how many of you remember the poll last year, but LEGO offered one of 4 new castle factions to be made in a set, and the one that I saw receiving the most attention was this blue kraken looking design. So I'm looking forward to see if that comes out. But here, the best option is using the red falcon torsos. If you pair them with the dual-moulded dark red and black legs, which are in stores now, or the old CMF samurai legs, I think it gives us a pretty decent pair of archers. Now, to work in some naval elements, I'm using these black Imperial colonizer caps that we got in the recent pirate set. They do look a bit late historically, but when you pair them with enough medieval elements, I think it blends in fine, and there's plenty of variation with the hair colour on these caps, so they're too good not to use. For some guards, I'm using the Hun torsos, which go brilliantly with the new quartermaster legs. You've got that pouch and the sort of compass or stars prints. It gives it a sort of nice blend of kind of medieval but also piratey kind of vibes. And for their weapons, I'm using the old unicorn horns from the Kingdom sets to top some spears or billhooks. And they, in this context, they kind of look like narwhal horns, and it just gives them more of that nautical flavour. Furthermore, these Lake Town helmets, I just can't resist using. They have this really tasteful fishtail cone and a fur brim to offer cover from the wind and rain on the high seas. These will go perfectly for a pair of knights, for which again I'm going to use the red falcon torsos with either silver arms or red arms and shoulder armour. Also, these conquistador legs are really interesting. They again add to that neat blend of medieval and pirate explorer aesthetic. For the captain of this faction, I'm using, I think his name's Grief Karga from The Mandalorian. I'm using his legs and torso with these there's some Batman arms from a weird figure. It goes great as any sort of accent for a medieval lord. You've got this sort of interesting brocade stitch, and also this Lake Town hat with a fur rim and this kind of bedraggled hair. It looks great with this gunslinger head. It looks like he's been peering over distant horizons and he's witnessing new continents, and I don't know, he looks ambitious. I like it. So that's the first faction. For the second faction, we had this really interesting orange shield, and I don't think there are any orange LEGO Castle factions. So this was really interesting, and perhaps because it reminded me of the Sri Lankan flag, I was thinking maybe I could make some saffron-coloured Mughals or Saracens. So to begin with, I'm following this design I found on Instagram, which used the back of this orange biker torso, which gives this really interesting scale armour pattern. So I got a handful of those. And some hobgoblin torsos. They look quite medieval. This belt across the chest is great for an archer, but it also has decent back printing too. And all of them, I swapped out the arms for either tan, orange or teal. And with these normal city barista legs, we have this really good base for some Persian-looking warriors. So naturally, I'm using the Prince of Persia helmets, and this is just the best. I found this head, I think, from an old Pharaoh's Crest set. You have this sort of balaclava, which is a ubiquitous piece of medieval fashion, and there isn't enough of it in LEGO. But here, it pairs really well with these tan and orange legs, and you get this fabulous desert wanderer look. Alternatively, the teal turban from the CMF Potter pairs wonderfully with the teal accents on the torso. With the same biker's torso, you get this strange helmet with these teal pigtails. So I got those and I attached them to an old gold Viking helmet. And now with some gold shoulder armour, this teal shield and a scimitar, I think we have a captain. I initially gave him this Atlantis body armour, but I want to see the torso print. I can't get enough of it. It looks brilliant. There's also this torso, which it's got this kind of quilted look, which is sort of authentic, but it doesn't spark joy. But it's convincing enough at a distance. On my Instagram, I made this joke that they were guards to an emissary who was going to get, like, trade agreements to trade spice, but then he has to endure British food. I don't know. I thought it was silly. I thought it was fun. But I've made an updated version of that emissary, and I'm using this kind of Dumbledore's cap and a Prince of Persia torso with this plain sand blue skirt piece, and I think it looks pretty good. It looks philosophical. So for the third faction, we had this pale blue fleur-de-lis symbol, and it wasn't really doing it for me, especially when I realised that grey shields look better than brown shields, so we've got a bit of a mix for this one. But when it came down to making this video, I found the old musketeer torso, which has this same fleur-de-lis symbol. So for a pair of these flower guards, I'm using the black falcon legs, some shoulder guards, and I gave them some ornate spears with a chrome harpoon, or the musketeer's rapier, which looks quite curious in the end of a lance. They don't need helmets because I'm just imagining them as sort of court guards, but this Harry Potter hat is just perfect. It's got this kind of, these sort of medieval locks of hair, and this sort of interestingly shaped hat. It could be anything. It could be a peasant's sort of messenger's cap, but it might be even like a Tudor lord cap. I've been watching a lot of Wolf Hall lately, and that sort of reminds me of Cromwell from that. But here, I think it looks good for a guard. For an archer, here's a very simple design. I think I've seen Goldfire use it, but it's just using a Castle 2013 torso, the falconer's legs, and a blue forestman's cap with a white feather. Now for a pair of knights, I'm using the same torsos. I think the paladin legs go really well with it because you have a continuation of that silver trim on the torso into the legs, and when you pair the torso with the paladin arms, then you have a real, intimidating looking sort of knight with, helmet, shoulder guard. For another more heavily armoured knight, I'm using this really beautiful heroic knight breastplate. It's got all these sort of flourishings, and it goes nicely with the paladin torso with those arms peeking out, and I think these are Pirates of the Caribbean legs. It's perfect for this faction's colours. For the captain, it's the same old. We're using the Black Falcon legs. I'm using the back of a Ninjago torso, which looks like any sort of standard medieval knight's armour. Shoulder guard. I'm using an Aquaman arm as well, which is a great sort of detail for any knight. Also, this goofy medieval bowl cut. It's perfect for any kind of knight character, and this sort of stoic head. So it's a pretty neat looking captain, I think. For the lore of this faction, it's giving this kind of really French, regal, baroque look, and so I imagine them as a sort of palace guard. So I've given them a lord to guard, just using the Dumbledore torso and skirt, and maybe he fancies himself a bit of a Roman, so I've given him Julius Caesar's hair. This final faction I had the most fun with. I thought it's such a simple design that perhaps it doesn't belong to a faction at all, rather it's a kind of rallying symbol for a peasant archer militia. And we've never really had such figures in a LEGO Castle set, but commoners, they would have made such a huge majority of forces on any given medieval battlefield. I kind of want to offer these as levy for any kingdom. They could belong to Lion Knights, Black Falcons, Green Dragons, so they have no specific colour scheme. And I'm sticking to quite earthy colours for all of these, which I think emphasises the peasant field tiller vibe that I want for them.
Dennis, there's some lovely filth down here!
The most common form of medieval armour is this sort of padded, quilted, it's called gambeson. And the best example I could find is this Viking torso, which if you swap the arms up for dark tan, you pair them with these dual moulded legs which you can get at the BAM stations, and so you have a pretty good base design for what these peasant militia might look like. However, to avoid having them all look like clones, the best other option I found are Hoth torsos, and they have that kind of quilted padding look that you get in gambeson. So I've made a whole bunch of those to create some kind of pikemen. Now, crucially for peasants, no one left their house in the Middle Ages without a hat. That's my understanding of it. And so I'm using the old castle coifs, which are brilliant, but they're retired. They're a bit hard to come by now. However, these gnome liberty cap sort of hats are on Pick-a-Brick now, and so you can grab a bunch of those in lots of different colours. But my favourite hat, I'm going back to that Harry Potter cap, except this time I'm using the dark grey hat. I'm pairing it with the Han Solo torso and legs, which I think is the best looking of the Hoth torsos for any of the peasant militia, because you have that continuation of the print into the legs. So here we have a pretty vicious looking lot of pikemen. I'm told pikes were the favoured weapon of town defence, because nothing keeps an angry mob at bay like a long spear on a stick. For a captain of the militia, I'm using this Frightening Knight torso, which I swapped out the arms for dark tan. It's so rare to find just plain chainmail prints in LEGO, but it's historically one of the most common forms of armour. The dark brown and the copper clasps on the torso pair really well with the belt on these Hun legs. I've given him a Kessel helm and Boromir's short sword, and of course the faction's shield, and I think we have a finely kitted out militia captain. However, where peasant levy were mostly used was for archers. In fact, it was law, at least in England, that commoners had to know how to use a bow and arrow, and this won them major battles like Crécy and Agincourt. Now you can use the same Hoth torsos as I did for the pikemen. They also need some commoners' weapons like knives and axes. Another example here uses the back of an olive green puffer jacket with these goat herder legs, and I think it looks close enough to padded armour. Also the aviator cap looks a lot like a boiled leather helmet. Now to make a captain for the archers, I found this brown forestman's cap from way back when. They're a bit expensive now, but I think it would look perfect for a captain of the archers. It's a bit silly, but if you happen to have this Scooby-Doo Black Knight torso, there's this silver dinner jacket, which if you turn the arms around, you get this sort of breastplate print, which pairs really well with Bard's legs. I've given him a Mandalorian cape, this custom bow, a torch, and an arrow pack, and this grizzled face, and I think he looks pretty sweet for a captain of the Archer Militia. Now, I like to give each faction a battle mage, but, you know, peasants being what they are, bless them, they don't have a lot of magic about them, but I've given them this kind of mad cleric, Bible basher type character. And I think he looks pretty cool. We're using the Dareth torso. It's just perfect. He's got this pentagram on the back of it, which is an ancient religious symbol. It's been used by pagans and Christians. And it goes really well with the Molly Weasley skirt piece because you've got a continuation of the brown chevrons on the shield. The Wolfpack arms as well, very nice little hint at his sort of battle cleric position. And I'm using this mean kind of 2013 castle head. It looks like he's muttering curses under his peasant's cowl. It's brilliant. Also the Ninjago crescent blade on the stick adds a bit more of the lore to this cult, weaponizing the moon to defend the star. I have a lot of lore behind this faction, and I might save it for another video. But that's it for today. Those are all the factions. Let me know what you thought of them. Drop any suggestions that you like. And yeah, until next time, farewell.